Hello. For this interview, I have asked Elizabeth Swenson to join me. Elizabeth Swenson has been the executive director of MCTV for how long now, Elizabeth?
You know, it's 10, 11, maybe 12 years. I originally went to MCET, where Charlene Amick, who had started MCET, was still working, and thought I would volunteer for a couple months. And over time, I just kept volunteering, and at some point it became clear there needed to be a new director, and the board asked me, I think it was in 2002 or 3. MCET was a really poor. I mean, we were poor, but MCET was had 18-year-old equipment and really was barely functional when I came along. In fact, I mean, really, in some ways, why I even got involved is I couldn't figure out why I couldn't watch it. I couldn't see it or hear it very well. So, so I got a lot of help. I did a lot of studying, and it was sort of like going to college to be a public access person, So I'm glad that exists out there, and in some ways we have participated, we've been able to help people with what we've learned that way too.
And what does MCTV, for audience members that may not be that familiar with it, what has MCTV been doing in the community?
Well,
and for the community, I should
right,
say.
It's sort of, I mean, basically I see us as being the media, the communications within the city and the county here. And so on one level, we do a lot of government meetings, which some people hate. But actually, a lot of people appreciate being able to see a meeting, especially for their topic. So maybe they only want to see a meeting once or twice a year, but they're really thrilled that it's there. And there's other people that are devoted meeting watchers. So in a way, over the years, part of the role of meetings has been historical, too. You can actually go back. I've seen a video that talks about, we're not giving any money to Access Television. And someone said, well, no, we aren't giving any money to Access Television. And it's a shame. But, that there's a whole history of meetings and activities that have happened here. So that's a part we've played, and it's a part that makes me very sad to know that that's going to end.
Yes, and for our audience that's not aware, recently MTV lost a lawsuit that was brought against them concerning a dispute over the ownership of the current building that you're in. And obviously very sad times. Would you explain to our audience a little bit about the overview of the events and the circumstances that led up to the lawsuit?
First of all, I guess MCET was in a very small 350 square foot room up at the high school, and we really did want to move, and we really didn't know how we were going to move. And then one day this guy Bud Farley walks in. It was actually a Saturday, and said, well, the Footlighters were really not they didn't have enough money to support the building. They weren't going to be doing their regular show anymore, and they wanted to dissolve, and they were a nonprofit. They needed to give their building away. And it was like, wow. And I actually came down and looked at the building right then. I said, oh, I've never been there. Could I come see this building?
Right.
And so, we could tell that it was a mess. I mean, a mess. And it stunk. It was pretty funky. But I thought, wow, we could have a studio. We could, So, in fact, we do have a studio now. But it seemed like a wonderful thing. And Dan Jurdy was on our board and on city council, and so there was a proclamation from the city, thanking the Footlighters for helping the building move on to somebody, who could take care of it. And then there was a big article in the newspaper. But so at any rate, the whole community knew about this building, or I shouldn't say the whole community, but lots of people knew about it. And we only heard good things. I mean, people were, oh, good, somebody's going to use that building. And we never heard a negative thing from anybody.
And when did you actually physically move into the building and start, working to develop it into a proper working studio for yourself?
We actually didn't move in. When the vote to give us the building happened in late June of 2006. Bud did say Bud, the president of the Footlighters, said, people are sad about the end of the Footlighters, and he wanted to do some work and stuff. So we sort of left it alone for a few months, because also we were planning what did we need for this new building and getting the equipment moved in, all those kinds of things. So we didn't do anything. We didn't get a deed until February of 2007. And then we said, okay, Bud, you have to move out now.
Right.
And so we gave them a deadline of May 15th, I think, of 2007. And we got the building pretty well cleaned out, and a lot of volunteers came and scrubbed floors and did all kinds of work. And we had a big party on June 1 of 2007. And we had about 150 people that signed in the guest book, and we know not everybody signed the guest book. So we had a big crowd.
Right.
And they all, I gave a little talk about thanking the Footlighters for giving us this building, and that we were definitely going to be making some changes, but that we wanted it to be a community space. And some Footlighters even came to that party.
Right.
So anyway, we began then moving in, and one of the first parts, well, maybe I should go back a little bit. When Bud said the Footlighters were going to give us the building, the board, my board, MCTV's board, actually we were in transition then, but said, well, let's find out how much is this going to cost to run, and what kind of shape is it in, and all those things. And so we had a structural engineer come, and he said, the front of the building has some problems, so don't put a lot of weight in there. But generally, it didn't have leaks, and there might be some foundation problems, but there wasn't anything that seemed urgent.
Right.
Lots of problems, but nothing that was like, okay, you have to do this right now. Well, except maybe the electrical box, which we did right now.
But nothing that prohibited you from taking over and beginning the transition.
Right. And so we arranged for this, very intense Comcast equipment to be moved in here, because we thought, we're here. This is our home forever. We're going to be downtown Fort Bragg. We're going to have a studio. It's going to be great, And it felt like the money was going to be tight, our expenses. And I can't remember. I looked up what I reported, and I was probably off by a couple thousand. So basically, it was like $12,000 a year to run this building. So it's like $1,000 a month rent,
right,
in some ways. That is when you don't count all the things that had to be done to it and stuff. So anyway, we moved in, and we wanted to be able to have this studio space that we're in now. And that meant taking down they had kind of two stages in this room.
Okay.
And so the Rotary actually helped us to take down the stage that would have come out about halfway of width of the studio. And when they took it down, it was discovered that the floor underneath it was like buckled. It was like a roller coaster.
Wow.
And you could jump up and down on it, and it would move a lot. So someone said, oh, wow, you've got a problem. So we had people come look at it, and everybody said, the best thing to do is just clear this all out. The floor has been completely undermined, and you're not really going to have a
so it was
fix.
Rotten, basically.
Yeah, part of it is there's a river or a creek, I should call it.
A creek, right?
Felt like a river.
Yes,
but
sure.
that has run under this building forever, because Fort Bragg has tons of those, and it just ate away all the supports, and there was nothing under that floor, but it was also too close to the dirt, and so the moisture that was there all the time made the floor buckle. And it also wasn't going to work as a television studio. You can't really be moving cameras over, buckling floors. And that's just what needed
Practically,
to happen.
it's not, yeah.
And so, fortunately, at the time, we thought, Well, we just got some money from Comcast for facilities and equipment. We should be able to we could go ahead and fix this, and then it would be done.
Right.
And it'll be great. Well, of course, it didn't quite work out that way. As it turned out, the part that had what was called the pocket stage, once they got down to where that was, it was clear that was cement that also was completely undermined. There was just like a cement cliff sticking out. And so they said, well, this isn't going to work. You know? So they, so it meant, actually we knew the stage was going to have to come out, but we thought we could save the floor there. We thought we would save some cement there. At any rate, we couldn't do that, and so the best solution was to break up all that cement and to move it over here and pour a new cement floor rather than the wood floor we had in mind.
Okay.
And so just as we were finishing that, we got a letter from a lawyer, John Ruprecht, demanding some information about how did this building transfer. So that was sort of a long way to get to that story. But that was the first, we actually knew that there was somebody that didn't like that we had the building.
Okay.
Although we had heard that somebody had said, I'm going to get that building back. But we was like, what? We have a deed. I don't get it. You know, it sort of never knew what it.
Right.
So anyway, we began getting letters from a lawyer, the lawyer, Ruprecht. And several of those went back and forth from like August to October. I think it was 4 or 5 letters. And I've scanned those, and they're actually going to be up online. People can look at them. I'm going to put all the legal documents online.
Okay.
By the way. Because it's just if someone asks and they want a piece of information, I'll be able to direct them where it is.
Right.
But anyway, so the last thing that happened before the lawsuit is they sent a letter saying, you know, you're in this building, it was transferred illegally, turn it back to us immediately and maybe we'll rent you some of it so you won't have to move. And so we were like, and it had things like collusive and illegal and fraudulent and, you know, all those kinds of like words that make you go, what? I didn't do anything.
Okay.
Because we were honestly totally unaware of any problem at that point until that started happening.
Right.
And so anyway, the letter said, then he sent another letter and said, you know, it'll be up to my clients. And so that was in October of 2008. And in May, the end of May of 2009, we got a lawsuit. Actually, we didn't get the lawsuit till July because it's a little legal thing you do. You kind of hold on to the lawsuit, you register it, but you don't let the other person know in enough time to, you know, find a lawyer or do things. I mean, there was enough time, but they shortened it.
They
by a few
narrowed the
months.
window
Yeah.
for you. Okay.
It's a clever lawyer thing. So anyway, in July, we found out that we were in a lawsuit. And so I started talking to lawyers and taking them the lawsuit, and they said, well, no, we could, this is a,
So you decided as an entity and as a board to contest this?
Well, we did. Our choice was, and even when we first got that letter, we had just spent $20,000 more than we had planned to spend, and so we actually ended up having to borrow $40,000. So we had no money to move then. We had sunk all of our money into the building. We thought it was insane that they would wait 2 years to get in touch with us, and that they would do it
to
in
lodge
that
any
way.
kind of complaint or concern about what had happened?
No discussion, nothing. Nothing. We had no idea.
Right.
I shouldn't say we had no idea. A couple days in advance of the lawyer letter, someone came in and complained, but that was the beginning.
Okay.
Anyway, I forgot where I was now.
So you went to try and find representation for yourselves.
Oh, well, or should we? I mean, it was
Yes.
more to sign it. Okay, well, should we fight this, or are we just going to lose, or whatever? And honestly, every lawyer that we talked to said, "Oh no, this is a perfect laches case," which is essentially saying there may have been some problem with the transfer, but in fact, at this point, these people had no idea there was a problem, and for them to move will destroy them, is essentially what, or it doesn't say destroy, it'll be a big loss.
Right.
And so every lawyer I talked to said, oh, no, it's perfect for that, no, it should, it's going to cost you money, though. And so we were about to have a board meeting to decide whether to fight this or not. And a local retired lawyer here, Dave Alden, came in and said he thinks he found a law firm that will do it pro bono.
Oh. Okay.
So we thought, oh, okay, well, good, And so that's how the lawsuit started. And I wanted to go back a minute because when we first began to get letters from the lawyer who was in the lawsuit, someone has been critical that I didn't go talk to the Footlighters at that point. And so I thought about that a lot, and actually I agree with the criticism on, in the sense of it would have been the right thing to do on some level, except there's...
If they had dissolved, did you know, then how did they exist?
Oh,
if they
okay.
had dissolved?
I left that part out.
Yeah, I'm
You're
sorry,
right.
I'm just confused a little.
No, that's good. So what happened is, shortly after Bud said they were going to dissolve, he said, well, they'd like to do, they feel bad about that, and they'd like to keep their scholarship fund going. And so they're thinking maybe once a year they could do one performance of something, and maybe you could televise it, and maybe they could make a little money, and they'd still have a scholarship fund. So that seemed fine. I didn't think about dissolving as this corporate state of California legal thing. It was announced in the paper they weren't going to dissolve, but they were still going to give the building. That seemed fine. They still had the same problem. They couldn't support keeping a building. And so, as it turns out, now the two lawyers disagree on this, but the judge decided that it was illegal for them to give us the building without dissolving. So apparently they didn't dissolve. They just kind of didn't do anything for 2 years, and then regrouped and sued us.
Wow. Okay.
When I say they didn't do anything, I think they still had a float in the parades. They've always done that. And I think they might have had, well, actually in 2007, they had their Labor Day dress review performance. But they weren't putting on plays. You didn't hear about them. I didn't really know whether they had dissolved or not dissolved.
Right.
But they didn't dissolve. And so that was a legal problem for us. But again, it seemed like, really, could that be more important than the fact that we've been in this building for 2 years and have spent all this money, and we can't move out because we don't have the money to do that. But apparently to the judge it was. Okay.
So the question about contacting the Footlighters to, have a dialogue to find out, were you advised legally not to do that?
No, you know what? It just didn't occur to us.
Okay.
It was sort of like, we got a letter from the lawyer. Okay, we'll answer the letter. Oh, he sent another letter. Ooh, that's really nasty. Let's answer that.
Right.
I mean, you sort of like, you get locked into so I'm giving this as advice to someone, whoever gets involved in something, that, it might have done some good, or at least I would have felt like no stone was left unturned or something.
But on the other hand, they didn't come to you.
Right, exactly.
As a community organization to a community organization. It seems that they started to contact you through legal channels and through letters rather than coming for a face-to-face. So one could argue that both parties were guilty of not actually arranging to sit down and maybe
I agree.
do that.
And I think, honestly, from the trial, it was pretty clear that their first response was that they were going to do something to sue. In the courtroom, Junice said that she was following the
I'm sorry, who is that?
Oh, sorry, Junice Gleason, who's actually the name of the person on the suit for the Footlighters.
Oh, okay.
She stated in the trial that she had knew right away when the deed had transferred through the county, and she thought it wasn't worth the paper it was written on. And when she said that in court, I thought, really? Wow. But as it turns out, it kind of wasn't. And that was the other point that we lost the building on. And it's a technical kind of deal that I can't completely describe, but the type of deed that it was, which we arranged a lawyer to do, wasn't that it could be challenged. And that I think the issue was it was called a quitclaim deed, and I guess there's another kind of a deed that's more forceful. But in addition, the lawyer didn't notice that Bud had the wrong date on the minutes and that it wasn't a resolution, it was minutes. Again, stuff we didn't actually know. When we knew it once there was a lawsuit and we saw the minutes, but we thought, how could that be that important? You know, a date being off, you know.
Right.
But in this court, in this case, it was important, apparently.
Right.
So.
Did MCTV give any money to the Footlighters for the building?
No, you know, I suppose it really never came up. It was always that they were going to give it to us because that's part of what happens. Mm-hmm. And then it literally just never came up. Not that we had any money. So that would, you know, we probably could have scared together $10,000 or something, I don't know. But it wasn't that we could ever really pay for a building.
And they didn't ask for any compensation
no, it never came up.
financially.
It never came up. I mean, one of the issues is we only dealt with Bud Farley for 99% of this. He was the representative of the Footlighters. Mm-hmm. And I did go to a board meeting of people that I didn't know. I mean, I went to a meeting. I thought it was a board meeting. Mm-hmm. They voted to give us the building. You know, beyond that, I don't know. Some people say, well, that wasn't really a board meeting. Well, I didn't know that. I wasn't told it wasn't really a board meeting. I didn't know the people. Anyway, what was I going to say? It didn't make... The reality is they were saying there was no members, or very few members. So Bud was the person representing the Footlighters. It didn't seem at all odd to me that that's all I was dealing with. You know, if he was the person, we would say, okay, Bud, so... we have to, let's go ahead with this deed now. Okay, he says, and off we go. But apparently Bud didn't have the real authority, or according to the Footlighters, that wasn't really, the Footlighters that are now taking the building back, that he really didn't have that authority. Mm. It wasn't really a board. Now, part of the problem was I don't think there was any other members, so he appointed some people to be on a board that I guess he didn't have the right to do. It's, you know, it's very, the records of all this are very...
nebulous.
They don't really exist, let's just put it that way. The Footlighters turned in a list that they say was 26 members, but it's just a list that they wrote down could have been members 5 years ago. I don't know. There wasn't
right.
there wasn't anything really to back it up. It was just a list that they said were the members. So and they said that well, I guess I didn't tell this part of the story. I didn't learn this until just before the trial, but what they're saying happened is that Bud canceled the production that year in 2006. He said, we're not having any production. It was in May of sometime because it didn't meet Footlighter standards.
Okay.
And so everybody was upset about that. And he said, apparently, to Junice Gleason that they weren't going to have any more meetings. And so that's why they didn't come to a meeting. That's why they weren't at that meeting. That's their explanation. So just before, when I read the trial documents, or no, I guess it was the depositions of Junus, is when I learned that apparently Bud had stopped meetings and they hadn't come to meetings. What I never learned, and which is the burning question I always have, is why didn't somebody say something then? I mean, to me, this is the crux of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have they don't ever explain why they didn't say anything. They do talk about finally somewhere after the deed was transferred, they went to a lawyer, not the lawyer that they ended up choosing. And of course, we don't know maybe that lawyer said you don't have a case, or maybe he charged too much, or, I don't know what. We don't know what happened there. So that was sort of late in 2007, and then they waited like another year to do anything. So it's to me, it's just, I can never understand. I'll never understand why they didn't say, hey, no, we're not giving that building away. Who said that? Bud can't do that, or anything,
Right.
nothing. And that's, to me, is the weirdest darn thing. Now, they tell apparently some people, they say there was some secret agreement of some sort.
Between who?
Well, I don't know, because it certainly wasn't between me or anybody on the board. There was never any secret agreement of any kind. And they also say in court that they never talked to any of us, so I'm not quite sure how this secret agreement that only happened verbally could have happened.
And what are they implying this secret agreement was?
Something about sharing the building.
Oh,
but I don't know
sharing the
what it
building.
is. But
Okay.
I honestly don't know what it is.
All right. So why did it take so long to go to trial?
Oh, okay.
Because you've been in this kind of limbo for several years, which
Right.
I'm sure has had an impact on MCTV's ability to expand or to think of the future.
Right. No, it was one of the, when I first went to lawyers, they said, well, a case like this usually takes a year and a half.
Okay.
And I thought, oh God, a year and a half. Why can't they just throw it out? It's really it was really my thinking, but no,
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. So why did it take so long? Well, there was issues, and there was a lot of different issues, but we actually went to, they want you to kind of try to mediate and see if there's a way to work anything out. So we
Okay.
went to that, and I don't know why, but that dragged on for a long time. It was kind of left to the Footlighters to make some proposal, which they never really did, and then said, well, we want to go to trial. So then somewhere along the line, also, it got changed from being a jury trial, which we thought would be a good idea initially, to that it couldn't be a jury trial because of some part of the lawsuit. And that postponed things some more because it's a different court calendar for jury trials versus judge trials.
Okay.
And then so finally we have a date of July of 2012. So it's already 3 years that we've
Since you initially
since the initial stuff, yeah.
got the lawsuit handed to you.
So then we arrive at court, and a court personnel comes out and says a mistake has been made, and your judge is on vacation.
Oh, no.
So we're like, really? So our lawyer goes back down to Burlingame, and we come back, and they sit down to come up with another date, and that's now 6 months away. That was last January 2nd. So that made it, that's how,
Right.
So it took 4 years, almost to the day in a way, because you go to a judge-only trial, then the judge takes time to decide. In other words, the lawyers wrote. It wasn't like Perry Mason or something where they deliver a closing argument, or like you would with a jury trial.
Okay.
They submitted written final statements, and then they pick apart the other person's final or other lawyer's final statement, and then they get to rebut that again or something, and then the judge has, I think, whatever time they want to
Okay.
take. So the judge apparently ruled. The trial was over January 11th, and the judge ruled on early May 1st, somewhere around there. May 6th, maybe something like that.
Right.
So, and the original suits had started on May 29th of 2008. So, no, 2009, sorry. So, to 10, to 11, to 12, to 13, 4 years.
4 years.
And it had a huge impact. It had an impact in that we couldn't go for grants.
Okay.
To fix the building, to put in insulation, you know, to do things to make it more comfortable in here, for one. We felt like fundraising for projects that we could commit to, we couldn't really do because we thought we were going to win the trial, but we couldn't really say, oh,
Right.
this is ours, you know, we can come do this. So it just had a huge impact. It had, the board really couldn't move in any particular direction. I mean, it was clear that we had to, you know, we have always had financial problems, and we had to try to figure out what to do about those, how to reorganize. But you can't really do that when you don't know if you're going to have a building. So it was sort of like we just had to kind of stand still. I mean, we didn't completely. We did classes. We did the class that you took that had you doing this, and we you know, did senior perspectives and did the nonprofit community service day things, and you know, did some nice projects for other nonprofits and stuff. But I always felt like we couldn't really move forward the way that I would have liked to until we had this behind us.
So Elizabeth, in total, how much has the organization of MCTV invested in this building?
You know, I've never really added every single penny up beyond about 110, 115,000. Overall, I think we've probably, I mean, if you want to count the vacuum cleaners we have to buy to soak up the floor or whatever.
I was going to say,
you know.
you mentioned earlier about the creek that ran through and the damage that it had caused to the, you know, existing foundations that, you know, MCTV paid to have fixed, but still it's not completely fixed because the studio does flood frequently when we have our wonderful rains.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's a lot of mopping and drying and things going on. So, you know, when you've got all this heavy technical electronic equipment, that's also a concern for keeping that safe too.
You know, it is, and we could have fixed it if we weren't in a lawsuit. I mean, basically, the French drain that we put out in back of the building that would, because this building is below street level, needed to be considerably deeper. And French drains are not an outrageously expensive thing to do, but we didn't have those resources without asking people to donate. And again, we felt like.
And also, if you did, unfortunately, as proved to be the case, would be losing the building, then why would you want to continue to invest in the infrastructure? I understand that. Not only the impact and of the financial commitment that you have, you know, MCTV had made to this building. How many people are on staff, on paid staff here at MCTV?
Well, now there is Mateo, who's works generally not quite full time, about 32 hours a week. Earl, who works 15 hours a week and does the website and the scheduling, along with Barbara, who volunteers on a regular basis to do that. And then Al, who, you know, is around here a lot and works, gets paid when we have paid work and doesn't when we don't, and myself. At one point we had more, you know. Troy used to work here, and we had Troy, Mateo, and actually there was a desk person at one point. But as the number of cable subscribers have gone down, so as our budget, and so that's
and your inability to kind of do
anything
future
else,
fundraising, etc., is impacted. So these people have now become as the dissolving of MCTV, which has happened, correct?
Well, there'll be months between when the final paperwork is signed, but it's initiated, yes.
But they have lost their jobs. You have all lost your jobs.
Yeah, I actually will probably keep working to deal with some, depends on how the dissolution goes.
Right.
So a little bit of money has been set aside to sort of cover some of my time just to take care of that paperwork and stuff. But nobody's getting paid after this week, and so we've set up the, I don't know I really don't know what's happening, but we haven't scheduled past Sunday.
Right.
Yes, all of them will be out
But the
of
bottom
work.
line is you do have to vacate the building. You have decided as a board and an entity that it's not financially viable for you to be able to continue as an organization. And is that technically then going to be the end?
Yeah, and when we say not financially viable, the problem is we owe $44,000. A judgment has gone through the court.
Okay.
And there's no way we can satisfy that. So it's not like, oh,
And
well,
how
we
did they
just...
arrive at that figure, Elizabeth?
They took what they considered the expenses that were repairs, even though to them they're not really repairs. So that was about $67,000. They said our rent would have been $100 and some odd thousand, and they deducted the amount we spent on the foundation work, even though they think it didn't really need that. And they came up with $36,315. And then someone has to pay the lawyer's costs, not his fees, but copies of depositions and things like that. So that's another roughly $5,000. And then they were demanding, which is kind of a joke, that we pay the back taxes, last year's taxes on the building, when the decision basically says you never owned the building. So we've paid like $16,000 in taxes over the years. But anyway, we decided to pay the taxes because we're tired of fighting that. So we have paid the taxes, and that leaves us with just about nothing.
So apart from some final house cleaning things to take care of, this is the end?
Yep.